Mike Sother here.
Karl here.
And Shawn Devitt.
We're going to talk today about what do we do December, January, February, scouting timber, food, stands.
Right
What
on.
do we do in the winter?
Everything.
Ooh,
Right.
what do you do in the winter?
Well, what do people mostly talk about in the winter? Right now, currently, everybody talks about, if you watch the media stuff, everybody's talking about timber stand improvement.
Yep. It is the best time to cut your trees.
It is,
It
actually.
is.
You
If
know.
you're going to be hinge cutting or dropping.
And now that's if you're going to cut trees, too. So you have to assess that in your plan, and some of us should and some of us shouldn't.
I think
If you got open timber and the deer just kind of willy-nilly through there and they're not bedding on your property or something, and
Better
I don't
make
know,
some.
it depends on your size of your property too. You don't want to, and this might sound bad, you're not going to have like a 4 or 5 acre property and be able to make bedding and a food plot and expect to have a transition
no.
that's too close to each
Yeah.
other. But if they're bedding on your neighbors, and you've got open space, and then you've got food on the other side of your stuff, you can create a path of least resistance for those deer to get through there, right?
100%.
And also timber stand improvement at this point. So, do you want a hinge cut? Do you, like Mike said, do you want to cut them all the way down? Well, that comes down to your property too. And I mean, if you don't know timber stand improvement, then you need to educate yourself on it. Because it's probably, to me, in the top 5 of what you need to know to make a successful whitetail property. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
That being said, there's all kinds of YouTube channels out there you can watch. You can actually talk to your foresters. But if you're talking with a forester, now remember this, if you're going to do this for whitetails, it's not doing it for timber. So, a good whitetail property is not a tree harvesting property.
No.
100%. And anybody that tells you differently, in my opinion, doesn't know what they're talking about. Because the timber guys are going to tell you you have to cut, all these different trees out. And, the aspens, and you got to cut the elm, and you got to cut ash trees, all this kind of stuff. Well, a lot of this stuff, maples, certain maples, all this is prone to making, the deer definitely love a lot of these trees. And you got to watch what you cut. So soft maples and things like that, I like to hinge cut those. Why? Because then they come back in the spring and they're alive, and
Yeah.
you got all that undergrowth, and then the new undergrowth there, the deer are actually using the
browse.
woody browse this time of year, things like that. You want to create that for all these deer.
Yeah.
So
I
I think
mean,
that's important.
When, just like all of us do, during hunting season is when you start planning this. You're watching how your deer are moving, or how they're not moving, or where you want them to move. And then it gets to this time of the year, and yeah, like you guys said, it's the best time to do it. You can see it's what it looks like during the rut or the end of October or whenever when you're hunting, and go out and have a plan, and don't just start cutting because you want to clear an area out for or whatever.
Yeah.
Really put some time and thought into what you're doing.
Right, and it's not, Mike will tell you, and
I did a lot of it last year.
yeah, and how did that go? How'd that work out for you?
It worked great.
Yeah.
I did it for both, and I hired a company to come out.
Well,
And-
I think it was more you were fortunate enough to be able to take some.
I was able to do it on my property, correct?
Yeah.
But I have a large woods.
Yeah.
And my wooded area is over 30 acres. Beautiful, mostly all hardwoods, big, but late that thing's wide open.
Yeah.
And contrary to my wife, she believes it's lovely in there. I think it sucked because you're not keeping nothing in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I talked to a few people. I have a couple of friends of mine that are arborists, which I'm lucky enough.
Yeah, that
So,
helps.
I had them come through, and I set up basically another 4 acres of bedding. And we did both. We hinged some, dropped some.
Girdles.
Yep. girdled some for future. Set up a basic perimeter, really, and it stayed inside there, which I designed my saddle out of.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Karl saw that. We filmed a lot of it last year.
Yeah, you guys go back and check out Central Wisconsin property line setup when we did Mike's piece, and you'll see all that stuff, and it worked perfect for him this year.
And the one bedding area that I had, that I always had, we just made it better.
Yeah.
And it's thick as hell. I kept a lot of deer this year. I have a ton of deer right now.
Yeah.
You know, which is great because I have the food. But yeah, I think it's a huge thing. But I would tell nobody, like Karl said, don't just go in there and start cutting trees down.
Yeah.
Because you don't, you know.
Then you need to educate yourself on what trees you have on your property too. I mean, you can, especially this time of year. I mean, oaks are pretty easy to figure out. Maples are pretty obviously shaggy bark hickory. We all know that stuff.
Boy.
Which is not a great tree for deer, but whatever. Great for squirrels.
Or a stand.
Yeah, or a tree stand.
Yeah.
There's that too.
Or anything.
But you know, elms are a big one. What's the other? Box elder. Box elder. I think box elder is probably the #1 deer tree out there. If you hinge cut a box elder, put it down, it's probably one of the most resilient trees, and it's going to sprout out of its
just
roots.
keep growing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You can't kill them.
And then
No.
it just all out the trunk again, and then you
Deer
got all
love-
that lower
Love
woody
to bang
browse
up
for 'em.
against it.
Yep. Oh yeah. So creating a lot of side cover. Now I'm not saying just go in there and start hinge cutting box elder trees.
No, you got to have a plan and what the plan's supposed to do. I
Right.
mean, where you want these deer to bed, you know, in regards to where your food is, if you have food and your
Right.
access and the travel routes already that they have, if you need to change their travel routes because you can't hunt that area.
Right.
And I think, you know, the biggest thing with the timber cutting, besides creating habitat, is again directing traffic.
I know one of my biggest things too is when I had the guy out there and we were starting to do it, we specifically set it up to pull the deer to one side of my property.
Yeah.
And why did I do that? To keep them away from the neighbors.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I want to hunt them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we tried to keep them more on one side of the property than the other so
Yeah.
that they didn't tend to vary as much out into those
Right.
fields.
Here's the other thing about Mike's property too that he hasn't mentioned yet that I noticed right away is he did it basically in 3, maybe 4 different areas, and he did it on purpose. So let's just say he said 4 acres basically that he made for it. So let's just say he took each one of those individual spots as an acre, and it might be more, it might be less. I'm not really sure. Just by looking at it, I'm gonna say it's pretty close to that. That being said, well, I got a nice picture here. That being said, what it does is it breaks up Mike's doe groups. Okay, so that's a really smart thing to do because now he's taking the stress off of his animals. So less stress on his animals, the better off he'll be. If Mike sends me this picture, I'll post it up on the page so you guys can see what we're talking about right here. But basically, he's got separate doe groups. So he's got 4 or 5 different doe groups on the property. They're not stressed. That gives him the space between food and bed, and gives the bucks space to bed off of that too. Keeps the bucks with less stress. Hence, he's got the great big herd. He's got this stuff. On a, you know, it's not a small piece, but it's not a giant piece of property either. Think about that. You know, you got 30, 40 acres that Mike's got there, and he's got his top 4 bucks are still on his property after the season.
Yeah,
Plus the does.
Yeah, we wanted them to live, and they all lived, and hopefully they drop some antler here for us.
Oh yeah, that'd be
And,
nice.
You know, next year, you know, we might have some in the game.
Yeah, and that'd be good. Now Shawn's property, on the other hand, Shawn's got plenty of food too, and he knows where his bedding areas are too. But those doe groups are separated, right?
They are separated, and they are separated between different bedding areas. And some of them I created. Some of them were created just by old trees coming down, and then I created travel corridors to those areas and then out of them.
Right.
You know, so that they
And
can
then
get
your
in.
stands are located on the transitions.
Yep. So that, you know, I'm easy in, easy out, and they generally are between food or where they're traveling to get to food. So I mean, you know, you got to kind of look and assess at what your overall goal is. You know, going in and just cutting things, you know, it never works, like Karl said. You know, and look at what you got for trees. That's very important.
Yeah. And that's probably just the timber stand improvement parts of what we're talking about. Now we can get into, the food. Obviously, you guys both have plenty of food left on your properties.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then, of course, my place, we know I have to add food because I don't.
Right.
Now that could just be the deer herd that I've got, and it's a substantial amount of deer, or obviously I didn't plant enough.
Yeah, and I mean, I have that, on my bigger property, I don't have enough food on it. It's gonna take a lot of timber cutting. It's gonna take a lot of work to get, a couple designated, 1 acre. And you can put in 2, 3, maybe 1 acre spots of just food.
Yeah.
But then I also have those small transition areas
Well,
off of the big ag.
And you have to pick that.
Yeah.
And that in turn goes to taking your trees down, because you might have to open that canopy up,
Yep.
which I had to do also,
Yeah.
to get food plots to grow.
Right, and I had, same with me, 7 years ago on my smaller property at home, transition area off of ag, it was dark, real dark in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a couple weeks of...
And there wasn't much undergrowth.
There wasn't much undergrowth, so it was a couple weeks of cutting trees and getting stumps out, the best I could. I've left some stumps in,
That's not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's not.
But-
The deer use them, I have one that they rub up against on, so...
Yeah, well, here's the other thing that's going to happen here. Now, we had a great big windstorm
Mhm.
here in December. We had those big storms come through. Well, a bunch of trees went down on my property. So they go across the trails or whatever else we got, and so I'm going to have to cut those up, obviously, and at that point I'll decide whether or not I think there's some way I can benefit off of it or not. One thing or the other. If a couple of those trees are bigger, I'm probably going to keep the logs, because I think this year we're going to try and build a building or something, and I can use some of that wood. Mike's place, you guys seen the podcasts earlier. We were at Mike's, and he made a bar out of a slab, rough cut slab. I think that'd be kind of cool. I'd like to do that on my property, my place too. So we'll do
Now,
something like that.
on my bigger property, I've touched on it where they logged it about 6 years ago, and they just clear cut just about everything.
Yeah.
And I mean, so out there really is no timber improvements. It's more of, now we got to clear out the underbrush, and we got to clear out spots.
You need to get some machinery in there
Yeah, big
in
time.
the winter.
Yeah, I'm working on that. But it created a lot of bedding, a ton
Yeah, I was
of
gonna say,
bedding.
I love those nasty.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's as nasty as
Spots
can
like
be,
that.
and I mean, there are spots that there are big trees left. It limits where you can put some stands every now and then, but you really are watching that bedding, and how many deer it holds, but I don't have the food out there.
Well, the good thing is, though, is you can set that how you want it now, because you already have your bedding.
Mm-hmm.
So now you can set up your food plot area,
Right.
Pull them right out of there.
Yeah.
The other
set
really
up all
good-
your accesses, everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the other really good thing about that property too that Shawn hasn't touched on is that property, there's transitions vertically, but there's a lot of up and down hills and stuff.
Mhm.
You could hunt a lot of guys on that property and never see each other.
Yeah, I mean, it rolls. It rolls down into some
There's a lot of stuff. out
stuff
there.
that if you did shoot something down there, you better have some good friends willing to help you get them out.
Oh, yeah. We know a couple guys.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But and now my smaller property, it was different. It's like what it was originally. You could call it like a walk in the park. It was so clear. There
Yeah.
wasn't a lot of underbrush, so I took and did a lot of hinge cutting and left a lot of dead stuff down, so it got a little thicker and some stuff started sprouting. And now, with the food that I have on there, this year and just these past couple of weeks, I've never seen the amount of deer out there that I have compared to this year. And the bucks. The quality has gone up.
Yeah,
over
the pictures
years.
you've been showing me are pretty impressive.
Usually they don't stick around, but I think there's just a lot more cover for them now that underbrush has grown up,
Yeah.
and with the food, they don't have a reason to leave.
Yep. Well, that's not a bad thing.
No.
But you want them to leave here in about 3 or 4
Well,
months.
they will. As soon as the farmers start,
Yeah.
as soon as the farmers start planting again, they'll be moving.
Yeah, because at that point, we're going in and we're tearing all of our stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
So we're not going to have anything for them yet.
Right.
Nope.
But they remember that,
Yeah, they'll be back.
Oh,
they'll be back, and I think that's a big thing too. Is that the deer remember from year after year what you have. So, I mean, it takes time.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I would go with remember, but what also happens is if you have the does are actually fawning on your property,
Yeah.
they're grazing those deer there.
Yeah.
And bucks will come back,
Mm-hmm.
but their core areas are usually around that area,
Yep.
and that all transitions through, and you start to. Right now is the time, and I know we talked about it before, but I think this is when you're growing a herd this
Mhm.
time of year, and hopefully, we'll see next year for your guys' properties for sure, where you guys both have good deer herds on there. I would expect that next fall you guys are gonna see your bucks that you're seeing now.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, they'll be bigger, so that'd be a good thing.
Yeah.
But what do we think about minerals? Somebody asked about minerals. Well, in our state, it's kind of illegal,
Yeah.
from what I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say this: back when it was legal, we did use minerals down on one of the properties I used to hunt, and I think that something scared me for a second there. I think that the racks on the deer were actually, I don't want to say bigger, but we definitely had healthy deer. Now that particular spot's one in the core area CWD, and I can say now, the genetics have gone down. Not that there aren't big deer, it's just they're far and few between. I don't think minerals on the ground would do anything for that. This time of year, don't think that your deer are eating the mineral because they're eating mineral.
No.
They want that stuff for their bodies, and I get all of that.
They go to it when they need it.
Yeah.
Corn is king.
Corn is king.
Corn.
Oh yeah, corn and
Beans.
beans. Yeah, if you got beans, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, leaving, I've got a standing bean field right now that's about an acre. And I mean, I overplant a little bit and I've gotten away with it. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's, they're thick. And I mean, I can't tell you every night the amount of deer that are in that standing bean field. And I mean, in the early fall, even when the farmers start taking, their crops off, they're not in it like they are now.
Oh no.
And I mean, that's where, for us not being able to use mineral, you have to look at other ways to keep them around and feed them and give them the nutrition that they need.
Yeah, most importantly, give them the nutrition.
Yeah.
But other thing, that's pretty much it right now.
Stands.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, you want to talk about tree stands right now? Some people pull stands. Honestly, people
I don't.
pull them every year. I don't pull my stands.
I don't either.
But you
I don't-
have to remember to maintain your stands. So,
Yeah.
But not this time of year.
Yeah, that's usually spring, spring, late summer, you're going to have squirrels up in there.
Yeah. One thing I think I learned now about my stands, like I don't put them up now,
No.
take them down, but I was in my property 2 nights ago,
Mhm.
and you can really see the travel,
Yeah.
and it really tells you a lot, because if they're using that travel now, they were most likely traveling that all year.
Yeah.
Right.
So you can really see the paths that are beat down, and I like to log that stuff and be like,
Yeah, this is the best time to scout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
It
That's what
does
I get
give
out
you. It gives you. I think it gives you a better perspective of where you can put new stands,
Yep.
or whether or not you want to move the
Yeah,
ones you got.
I'm not when when I put a stand up, it's generally for a reason. I'm not probably ever going to remove that stand unless it's really just worthless and I need it.
I'm
for
an
another
advocate
spot.
of that too.
I don't need it, I'll just get
got-
another one.
Yeah, I just
I've got
Put it- leave it
stands.
up.
I've got stands 25 yards from each other,
Oh,
and I've never sat
Yeah.
in one.
Yep.
Maybe sat in it once or twice and been like, "This doesn't work," but I leave it there because you just never know. You might want to sit.
yeah, yeah, one little bit of
Yeah.
wind direction change.
I told Karl that this year. I put one up 2 years ago and never sat in that stand. And I was walking in this year once. I'm like, I'm gonna sit in that thing, and I was gonna take it down. I'm like, I'm not taking that down. I
Yeah.
sat in it. 16 deer that night. I'm
Yeah.
like, Jesus.
Yeah.
You guys, I
Right.
can think of 3 stands on my property right now I put in when I first bought
Yeah,
it.
you never been in them.
I haven't been in one of them yet.
Yeah.
And the reason for it is, you
The
can
time.
only, time of the year thing, you just,
Like you said, playing percentages during the season, and
Uh-huh.
then, but it's there.
yeah.
and if you need it, it's there.
Yeah.
Because things change. I mean, deer movement change. You get different deer coming in. I mean, like right now, I've got bucks I've never seen before. And they're not traveling the exact same ways all the other bucks were traveling this, earlier in the season.
Yeah.
They're coming in from different directions, and if they decide to come back next fall, they might be from one of those stands I haven't sat in 3 or 4 years.
That's a really good point.
There's no harm in having a lot of stands and a lot of options.
Yeah.
Yeah, people always laugh. How many stands you have?
I mean, the only
A
thing
lot.
you want to watch though is, like you said, when they start growing into the tree, if you're going to damage the tree and stuff like that. I mean, if you do leave it out for a long period of time, like I have some in some cedar trees.
Mm-hmm.
Those, it's soft wood. I got in them this year and was going, oh boy, those straps are in there pretty good. Now the stand's growing in there. We're going to have to do a little work on it next year, and but it's going to stay in that tree, just going to move it around a little bit.
I've got stands that are completely growing into trees.
Me too.
So it's just like, whatever. But, I mean, that pretty much lays out all those questions. That's pretty much what we do this time of year. Pretty much December through February will be our timber stand improvement. Stand-wise, if we decide we want to check and move things, we're going to obviously scout the properties and make the moves we want to make, or position, pick trees and stuff we want to put stands in, and we get the stands moved, put them in, or we'll move stands from other places. We'll definitely be doing that. Mineral, we don't have. Food, obviously both of these guys have food on their property yet that did help in their deer herd. Me, I have to change some stuff on mine, so that pretty much covers the show. Appreciate you guys listening to The Obsession. Remember to check everything out every Saturday here at YouTube, Rush Outdoors Wisconsin on YouTube. Also check us out on Spotify. We'll be coming out with the podcast, The Obsession. We'll be talking about all the questions you guys ask us, and we'll try and give you the best answers we can. We're normal guys, all have real jobs, but we seem to be fairly successful in our ventures for hunting, and we've been doing it quite a few years. So we appreciate all you guys' support over the last 20 plus years. Thanks for listening to The Obsession. We'll talk to you guys next week.